The Los Angeles Rams have activated running back Cam Akers to return off of injured reserve. What does this mean for the offense? What does it mean for Akers? And what does it mean for the duo of Sony Michel and Darrell Henderson? We're going to talk about it and discuss it on this episode of the Locked On Rams podcast.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rams Nation, what is going on? As always, it is your boy, your host, Sosa Kremenjas. I'm a fantasy analyst at PFF and your host here at the Locked On Rams podcast, your number one daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Rams and part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you guys so much for always making us your first daily listen every day. And On Location is the official hospitality partner of the NFL. It's the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Visit onlocationexp.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. Now, welcome to our final episode. Fingers crossed before this Los Angeles Rams Minnesota Vikings game. Last time I said that last week, game gets rescheduled, everything gets thrown out of whack. But this one seems like the Rams should be able to go. The Vikings, we're going to see. There's some big news there. We're going to talk about the return of Cam Akers on this episode. That's right, Cam Akers. The Los Angeles Rams have activated running back Cam Akers to return off of injured reserve after a torn Achilles in training camp. Huge news. Huge news. Of course, it's going to have big repercussions for the Rams, both good and maybe even bad. And then some big news in its own right. The Minnesota Vikings lose running back Dalvin Cook to COVID. And I read somewhere on the internet that he was unvaccinated, which means he's done for this game. He's not coming back. He cannot play. The Vikings are going to have to turn to Alexander Mattison. And this is not good for them. I mean, they're up against the wall right now. I think they're sitting at 7-7, 7th seed in the NFC. They need their best player out there. And he's not going to be out there now, which is unfortunate. But good news for the Rams. It's just going to make their opponent a little bit easier. Of course, we feel bad for Dalvin Cook himself. Hopefully he's okay, and hopefully he can recover quickly in time for the next game and be perfectly healthy. But this is going to help the Rams. Unfortunately, this is kind of the way the game goes. He chose to not be vaccinated, which has knocked him out of this game. Otherwise, he would have had a shot to play at least. And now the Vikings have to turn elsewhere. Going to make the Rams' job a lot easier. And then on the other side, ironically enough, the Vikings lose a running back. The Rams gain one. Akers will be back, not necessarily for this game. They activated him to come off of injured reserve. Now they have a 21-day window where they can essentially either just let him practice and not activate him onto the game day roster and sort of steal a, roster spot, we'll call it, because you didn't activate him yet, so you don't have to get rid of somebody. But if they activate him, then they have to drop somebody off the roster, and then he's officially back and can play. So if the Rams won and he's good to go, he could be activated ahead of this game. Hell, by the time you're listening to this, he might be activated. So we'll see, if he's good enough to play in this game and what kind of workload he can handle coming off a torn Achilles. Mind you, it's been 6 months. This is unprecedented. He has come back so fast. Like, this is not normal at all. Usually it takes 12 months to come back and about 18 to 24 to be fully back and recovered and back to your normal self. This is 6 months we're talking about here. So when you're the Rams, this guy is someone that you're going to look at as a, future building block of the team. This is not just a 2021 type of endeavor here. So that's why I want to caution the Rams. As much as we want to see Cam Akers, and I think he is so much better than Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel, and at 100% would take this offense to another level. Like, I genuinely think he could seriously bring something to the table. How much can he bring right now, though? Is he 70% back? Is he 80%? Is he 90%? Is he less than 70%? I'm not really certain. So I have really no idea what to expect in terms of what he can bring to the table. I know what a healthy Cam Akers could bring, but I just don't know where he's at in his recovery process right now. And then the second aspect of it, like I mentioned, this is a future building block here, right? You have this guy locked in for 4 years on his rookie contract. The Rams are presumably going to want to try to find a way to extend him after that. And if that's the case, you don't want to run this guy into, serious risk of re-injuring himself here, which is obviously a possibility, and then really, jeopardize his long-term future with the team going into next year and then potentially his final year of his rookie contract. But a healthy Cam Akers definitely makes a big difference here. We're talking about a guy that had 21 missed tackles forced last year on 145 rushing attempts, averaged 4.3 yards per carry, 2.8 yards after contact per attempt, highest on the roster of all the running backs. This is a guy that can seriously make some things happen back there. I mean, this is a better creator than everyone on the roster. He's probably just as fast, if not faster, than Henderson in his prime. Has more breakaway ability. I think he can create more at the second level, and he is tough as hell. I mean, he's the perfect mix of, modern day running back. Can catch the ball coming out of the backfield, can block, tough as nails. He's going to run in between the tackles. He can take it outside. He's got enough speed to do that, and he can handle a 20-plus touch workload. Tough guy. I mean, this guy could seriously bring something to the Rams. And that brings us into this mailbag episode. Some questions here that you guys shot over, and we'll begin with the Cam ones, because ironically enough, you guys shot these over before this news came out, and some of them are similar, so we'll go over them together. From @LewisWoodFF_UK, he said, what do you think will be the plan at RB next year with Cam coming back, given Sony, Michel thriving recently? And then my guy DBrez6, he said, do you see any possibility of the Rams holding on to Sony after this year and phasing Hendo out of the offense once Cam comes back? And we'll touch on it. So, it really depends on the health of Cam Akers here. Because if we're talking about a guy that's 100% healthy, the Rams never trade for Sony Michel, and they go into the season with, Henderson and obviously Cam Akers. So I think going into next year, they probably won't look to bring Michel back, is my opinion. They can always find a running back in the day 3 of the draft, or for cheap in free agency, or I guess even by trade. You look at a Sony Michel, the way he was added, and you have Henderson under contract, you have Akers under contract, you have Jake Funk, who's also now back as well, under contract. You're going to have guys like Raymond Calais back off of injured reserve. So, I don't think that they have any necessary type of need to bring back Michel, even though he's been good. It's not his fault. It's just kind of a numbers game. And especially when we say numbers, a salary cap type of numbers game, because the Rams are really right up against the wall there, and they've got a lot of good players that are upcoming free agents. So I wouldn't advise spending up on running back there. I think the rest of this way, probably going to be a lot more Sony Michel for the next few weeks, slowly phase Henderson out of the offense. And when Cam can come back, I think that's when he takes over what Henderson was sort of slated to do. If that's 5 touches a game, maybe 8 touches a game, 10 snaps, 15 snaps, not really certain, but I think you're going to slowly ease him in. You don't need to just toss him out there and give him 21 touches right out of the gate. Get him some, conditioning, get him comfortable in this offense, and find ways to utilize his skill set. And then maybe, first round of the playoffs, second round, conference championship, whatever the case is. By that point, he's probably going to be pretty caught up, and then maybe you'll feel more comfortable, transitioning into him as the running back one, where you're giving him 15 touches a game, and then Michel, 12 touches a game, or some sort of mix like that. I don't foresee Cam Akers suddenly being a 28 touch guy like he was last year in that playoff run against Seattle, against Green Bay. Even though he can do that, I just don't know that it's the smartest thing to do right now. So I think the cautious approach, let's find a way to involve him. Let's find a way to utilize the skill set, but let's not put him at, harm's risk here. I think that's the way to go ultimately for this running back room. But it is going to be fun to see, because now there's a lot of different flavors, a lot of different possibilities, and Sean McVay can ultimately really dial it up however he wants. This is really his call, and running back coach Thomas Brown, these guys are going to make the call. And I think we're going to get a lot more explosion out of this offense now. I think it's going to be a good thing for Matthew Stafford, as well as that offensive line and everyone else involved on that offensive side of the ball. Now, in just a second here, we're going to continue along with this Mailbag Friday episode. You guys shot over some good questions, some Ernest Jones ones, which I really, really appreciated, because it's a guy that we haven't talked about a lot, and I certainly think he deserves it more often. So we're going to dive into that in just a second. You guys can always follow us on Twitter at QBsMEP, at Locked On Rams, and on YouTube at Locked On Rams. And as you guys know, the holiday season right around the corner. Actually, it's, pretty much tomorrow. I'm recording this on the 23rd. You guys are listening to this probably on Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas, or Merry Christmas Eve to everyone who does celebrate. Happy holidays to everyone else. If you guys want a nice little stocking stuffer, a nice little gift for somebody, go check out the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And it's actually even better than a candy bar, because it tastes like one, but you do not have to feel guilty after you eat it. It is not unhealthy like candy bars. It's actually high in protein, low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, low in fat, and it tastes like a candy bar. This is the Built Bar that we're talking about here. You guys have heard it on this podcast. So many different flavors. It's going to be something that appeals to absolutely everybody. Well, you have raspberry, mint brownie, cherry, double chocolate, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie, or if you're like me, coconut, man, coconut and chocolate, the best combination of all time. I'm saying it right now. Built Bar going to give you that extra fuel if you're going to go do some last minute shopping, go to a buddy's house, go to a friend's, maybe a little bit of alcoholic beverages, celebrating Christmas. You need a little snack afterwards that you don't have to feel bad about. Go try out that Built Bar, man. Throw it in your jacket, throw it in your purse, throw it in your car, your glove compartment, whatever. That thing will take care of you, I promise. And if you don't like protein bars, they got different kinds of stuff there as well. Some marshmallowy treats called Built Bar Puffs. It's a fun little spin-off from a protein bar. It doesn't taste like one. Very different texture, very different flavors. I personally like the lemon dip cheesecake. It's kind of marshmallowy. It's kind of, really, it's described well in the name. It's a puff. It's marshmallowy and it kind of cracks on the outside. Very good, very delicious, and a nice alternative if you don't like protein bars. If you guys want to check it out, go to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Just use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. And no one plays daily fantasy sports to lose. Let's call it what it is. We're all in it to win it. Winning feels so much better, but traditional fantasy sports are a long-term losing proposition because you never know who or what you're up against. Stat Hero is the first of its kind in the daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in a head-to-head fantasy matchup where the winner takes all. And here's the crazy part. Stat Hero will actually show you their lineup before you play, and you can handpick the team that you want to face one-on-one. This never before seen type of innovation in fantasy sports and sports betting hybrid has Stat Hero players clocking odds 4 times better than your traditional site. I know everyone likes the sound of that. Why? Because you do not have to compete against thousands of experts or unknowns. Stat Hero puts you in control of your own fate. With Stat Hero, you're actually in control of the stakes. You can decide how much you want to play for, and Stat Hero has no choice but to take you because they are daring you to beat them. Stat Hero head-to-head is what daily fantasy should be, one-on-one. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use the promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon. Promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match. Terms and conditions apply. Now, thank you guys so much for always making us your first daily listen here at Locked On Rams. We'll continue along with this podcast and the mailbag. And the next one is from @MauryRU. He said, how do you feel about Ernest Jones now based on his pro versus college tape? And how do you feel now about picking him over Jabril Cox versus your draft assessment? Happy holidays to you and the Ramley. Thank you, Maury, for always supporting, for always listening. You're the man. And that's a really good question. I feel like I could spend a whole episode on this one. And basically, if you listen to this podcast back throughout the offseason, I was fairly skeptical about Ernest Jones. This was a guy I didn't love his tape. I didn't think it was awful, but I didn't love it. I certainly thought the third round was a little bit rich for a guy of his flavor. It looked very limited in coverage for me. And, I've seen some flashes in the running game for sure. I thought there was, certain aspects where you see the IQ and he's able to read plays before they happen. And those were the really good plays. But then there were times where if he's not out ahead, he can get swallowed up a lot by an offensive lineman. And mind you, this is his pre-draft assessment. Now, though, he's been one of the more surprising players, in my opinion, for this team. I mean, he has played very good football. He's not, Ray Lewis, or let's not get it twisted here, but for a guy that I came in with low expectations, he's been much better in coverage than I expected. A very fluid mover. I think he's very athletic. You see the difference, right? He lines up next to Troy Reader. No offense to Troy Reader, but you just see the difference in speed and the difference in ability, how much they can cover in terms of ground and how quickly. There's a lot of a difference there. In terms of, is he better than Jabril Cox? It's hard to say. Cox is on IR. He got injured for the Cowboys. I want to say maybe in week 5 or week 6. It was fairly early in the season, but I still would have probably picked Cox. This is a guy that I obviously loved coming out, but it sounded like there was some medical issues that kind of, slipped him down to the 4th round, I believe it was. So I would go with Cox, but, in terms of Ernest Jones, it's been a lot better than I expected this season. I mean, you compare him to a guy like Kenny Young, for comparison's sake, you look at his completion percentage this year for the Rams, he allowed an absurdly high 91.2% of his targets to be completed. Comparison's sake, Ernest Jones, 75.9. I mean, in terms of the yards per coverage snap, which is a really good metric to determine how often you're giving up yards in terms of how many times you're on the field, Ernest Jones, 0.69. Kenny Young, 1.43. He was nearly doubling up on Ernest Jones, and a lot of people thought Kenny Young was a great player. So I think, that has probably skewed our perception now. Yeah, Kenny Young, not that good of a performer with the Rams. Actually really, really poor. And Ernest Jones, a lot better. So shout out to the rookie. He's done a really good job. absolutely has blown me away so far. I think the Rams are in really good position with this guy as of right now. In terms of the early returns, fantastic. The next one from @disinformed Dan, he said, with a lot of guys getting snaps because of all the COVID roster shuffling, how are you feeling about the Rams' depth heading into the playoffs? I feel fairly good. I mean, the Rams are as pretty much deep and healthy as you could possibly be at this point in the season. You look at some of these other teams, Tampa Bay, for example, last week, they lose a great player in Chris Godwin. He's out for the rest of the year. That is, an insurmountable type of loss. The Rams not really dealing with that. There's been a lot of COVID bouncing up, bouncing down, like you mentioned, Dan. And it's kind of been both a blessing and a curse. Of course, it sucks to lose your players, but at the same time, the Rams have won out since that's kind of happened. Obviously, Arizona was when it really struck. So 2-0 really since that COVID stuff struck. And you start to see a lot of these younger guys step up, a lot of guys that have stepped up to the occasion. And now you've been proven that you can really rely on a lot of players. Like you mentioned, maybe the depth is a little bit better than we've given it credit for. So I feel comfortable. I really do. I think the Rams are in a good position right now. Everyone that they really need is healthy. The Matthew Staffords, Jalen Ramsey's, Aaron Donalds, knock on wood. Hopefully these guys can stay healthy the rest of the way. But as long as they got those superstar key pieces, I always think the Rams are going to have a chance. The last one here from this segment from @RamsRocker, he said, which team would you least like to play in the first round of the playoffs, and which would be our best matchup in the first round? And I feel like a lot of people have asked this question over the last few weeks, and it seems like it's always changing. In terms of, for me, realistic, I guess we would say, I do not want to see the Rams play the 49ers. I do not. I mean, that would just be an awful draw for them. You talk about a divisional rival. It's always weird, right? The Rams last year, technically the worst team compared to the Seahawks, right? By seeding or standings, but a weird game. I mean, the Rams go in there and just smash them. So these divisional games are always weird. And for a third time, it is just strange. That's not something that happens very often. Of course, it does happen every now and again, but that is not something I want to see the Rams do, not against the 49ers. I just think the 49ers have their number, and it's just not been good. I don't know that I trust the Rams in that kind of a scenario. They don't really match up well. So that's the one I would really want to avoid. The one I think that would make a lot of sense, that would probably feel good for the Rams, is the Cardinals. And it's funny because I just said you don't want to play someone 3 times in a season and all that, and that's still true. But at the same time, I just think the Cardinals are not that good. And Kyler Murray in a slump. Cliff Kingsbury, never been proven of anything in the NFL. Cardinals, young team, never done anything really in the NFL yet. The majority of those guys, other than the Zach Ertzes and the Chandler Joneses who have won Super Bowl rings in the past, other than that, you lose a DeAndre Hopkins, and that team does not look that good. I mean, I think for the Rams, that's the team you want to play against, especially if you're healthy and you have everyone back. I don't know how the Rams could lose to that team. Of course, it's a possibility, but I certainly think they'd be a lot better in terms of the team, the roster, the talent. And I think they would have a big leg up, especially if they get to play at home. If the Rams finish, the 4th seed or whatever, and the Cardinals finish at 5th, or the Rams finish 3rd seed and the Cardinals finish 6th, I think you would really, really like that matchup personally. That's kind of where I'm leaning. But, at the same time, it's hard to say. If the Rams can get to the 2nd seed, probably have an easier matchup against the Eagles or the Saints or the Vikings. That's obviously more ideal, but I just don't know that the Rams can really leap the Buccaneers right now with the rest of their schedule. Oh man, it is a cakewalk for the Buccaneers, and it is a gauntlet for the Rams. So I'll say 3rd or 4th seed, and those are the teams that I would like to see the Rams either get or avoid. Ironically enough, both in the NFC West as well. That's going to do it for this segment. In just a second here, we're going to pick up with the final few questions. Wide receiver 3, Odell Beckham. Who's going to take over next year? We'll talk about that in a second here. As well as that defensive line. How have those guys performed recently? And of course, make sure to tune back in next week when we recap what happens between the Los Angeles Rams, Minnesota Vikings. If you guys want to get in on some of that betting action, I want to. BetOnline is going to have you covered for all of this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before, as football continues its march through the college bowl season and to the pro football playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all these sports action this season. So go head to their website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. All you have to do, just use the promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. From football to basketball, NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Don't wait. Make sure to take advantage now of all the amazing offers available. BetOnline, where the game starts. And thank you guys so much for always making us your first daily listen here. For your second, go check out Locked On Bets. These guys are going to get you right in your betting game. I promise you, they're going to help you make a lot more money than I will. So don't listen to me. Go listen to them. Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. And now we'll pick up with this final segment. We're going to get into it. No time to waste. A few more questions, a couple of joke ones, and we'll pick up with at Gucci442 The Hill. He said, huge fan here from Strathmore. I hope I said that right. New Zealand. One improvement I've seen over the last 3 games is our defense up front. Our pass rush has kept QBs uncomfortable in the pocket, and our run defense hasn't allowed anyone to get going, really. Do you agree? I absolutely agree. I mean, they've been playing great. It's really been on all 3 levels of the defense, but especially the pass rush. I mean, against Jacksonville, absolutely hounded rookie quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Against Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray looked lost back there. I mean, he was getting demolished snap after snap, regardless of who was back there. And then you go to this past game, a little bit less pressure against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, but still, they impacted that game. Aaron Donald still made a big impact. And in terms of the run defense, I mentioned it on Twitter. I said they're the best in the NFL. They're elite. And yeah, okay, the numbers might not suggest that they're number 1, but what are they? Top 3, top 5? Big deal. That's really splitting hairs at that point. Elite run defense, fantastic pass rush, and I totally agree. This is who's going to have to carry the Rams right now. It's the defensive line. Bottom line. I mean, they stop the run better than pretty much anyone in the NFL. They have enough firepower and star power and talent to consistently impact passers, and we've seen flashes of what they can really, really do, and it looks special. And at the end of the day, they're going to have to carry the defense. Like, that's just the way it's going to go. You invest in a lot of these big names, these big players, they have to step up, and they've done fantastic lately. So that really gets me excited thinking about what those guys can do, and then having an Ernest Jones, a Jalen Ramsey, a Darius Williams, Jordan Fuller, all these guys behind them. Oh, they got real potential there. And I think Raheem Morris has done a great job through the second half of the season, really extracting that talent and letting these guys go to work. No complaints for me. The next one from at Jake Barker 3 said, as you've mentioned on previous pods regarding OBJ's contract, if he chooses to go elsewhere, who do you see being that wide receiver 3 until Robert Woods was to return earlier mid-season? Is it a position that Ben Skoranek can fill, or would we source elsewhere and find someone else with more experience? Fantastic question. As you obviously have listened, I probably don't think OBJ is going to be back. I don't think it's impossible, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Rams somehow prioritize him. They always do weird stuff like that, but logic would dictate that he'll probably be gone, and we'll assume that he will be. So like you said, Robert Woods maybe going to come back week 4, maybe week 8, something like that. In that scenario, I just don't think the Rams should spend up a ton at receiver. You still got Cooper Kupp. You still, I guess, would have not OBJ, not Robert Woods, but Tutu Atwell maybe would come back at that point in time. Ben Skoranek, like you mentioned, a guy that could step up. I think the Rams would be fairly decent in that situation. Van Jefferson, of course. In my opinion, I guess I would say maybe Tutu Atwell, just based on draft status. This is a guy that was a second-round pick. You would have Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, and then Tutu Atwell. I think that would make sense. But, Ben Skoranek is a guy that obviously the Rams like, and he's gotten a lot of run this year. So that wouldn't be a shock at all either. I think it would be Tutu Atwell, then Ben Skoranek right underneath. Maybe a rotation between those guys. Maybe you want Skoranek out there to run block and Tutu Atwell out there if you're running a deep route kind of thing. So I think they've invested enough at that position where you don't have to go pay someone. But again, I would love to see OBJ back, man. A whole offseason, fully healthy, fully comfortable in the system. I really think that top 3 could do dangerous things, especially with Woods back. Oh, man, they would be so good. So fun to watch. I wouldn't be shocked one bit if the Rams find a way to bring him back. They always end up going somewhere we never think they will. We think they're going to go turn left at the cross section, and somehow they always go right. So I'm not shocked at all. I wouldn't put anything off the table right now. But those are the players I think could take over in the event that he does walk. The next one from at E. Litster, great question. He said, how do they ensure that there isn't bias in PFF and QBR grades? Thanks. And I think quarterback rating is based off of a formula, so there's really no bias there. I don't exactly know what it is. I don't think that the public technically knows what it is, but I think, some of those data nerds and whatever have found basically almost to the pinpoint what it is. So that's, based on completions and incompletions and yards and touchdowns and all that. In terms of PFF grades, I'm not 100% certain because I don't do the grading, but that is a good question. And I think the way that they basically have no bias or try to have as minimal bias as possible is it goes through rounds and rounds and rounds of grading, right? It's not just one guy and send it off, it's good to go. I think it actually goes through 3 different stages of grading, which would obviously help if you have 3 different people looking at it. Then you can kind of contrast and compare and see, is this person accurate? Is this person accurate? Why is there a discrepancy here type of situation? So that's how I think they do it. I should probably know, but I don't deal with grades that much, and I don't do any grading on my own. So not exactly the most familiar. I'm sure one of the guys that was there for 10 plus years would probably have a much better and much more refined answer than I do. But I think they do a really good job at really trying their best to eliminate all the outside variables and really just getting to the nitty gritty of the play. The next one is from @JEJIV. He said, "Do you think we can finish the season 3-0?" And I do. I mean, at this point in time, I'm fully bought back into the Rams. I really am. I mean, they've won 3 in a row. I get it. Yeah, the Jags, not the best team, and the Cardinals kind of don't look that good now. And, I get it. All right. Yeah, the teams they beat weren't the best, and the Seahawks, not great. But 3 good wins, pretty convincing, all of them, in my opinion. They're starting to get hot. They're starting to get players back. OBJ's almost, fully integrated now. Von Miller looks like he pretty much is. Cam Akers coming back. Oh, man. I would not count this team out from going 3-0 the rest of the way. I think if you can go 2-1, you feel good. We expect 2-1. 1-2 would be a disappointment. 0-3 would be horrendous. And 3-0 would be awesome. That's kind of the way I look at it. 3-0 would be like that cherry on top. And we got, our cake and eat it too. We'll say 2-1 is sort of what I'm expecting. I don't know, which games. I'm going to assume you probably beat Minnesota this weekend, and then you split one between San Fran and Baltimore. Hopefully they win all 3, or hopefully they can at least beat San Fran, because I'm sick and tired of watching the Rams lose to those guys. But Baltimore's the one that probably matters the least. They're out of the conference. They're not in your division, none of that. But you would like to see them also beat a really good team like Baltimore. I think that would feel good for the team, the morale, and going into the postseason, probably pick up the pace a little bit there. So I think they can go 3-0. I've said a lot of words. Absolutely not counting this team out at all. I'm circling them right now as a team. I would be disappointed if they don't get to the NFC Championship game. I'm just calling it like that. The next one from @TadwellD. He said, with how good Greg Gaines has been playing, do you think SJD, Sebastian Joseph Day, and he both filled different roles? Gaines is faster, but SJD's run block grade was insane. I think you meant run stuffing. Or do you think the Rams move on from one? Well, this offseason, I think they're going to have to move on from SJD based on the money. And you have Greg Gaines right behind him. Like you mentioned, fantastic player. So good. One of the best nose tackles of football right now. But it sucks because Joseph Day, or we'll call him Bash for short, Bash, maybe the best nose tackle in football. Like, it's really hard to see, the Rams want to go away from one of these guys because they're so good. They're homegrown, both drafted by the Rams on day 3. Greg Gaines, a 4th-round pick, Bash, a 6th-round pick out of Rutgers, and both developed by the Rams. Like, you don't want to have those guys walk out of your building. And there's a way that they could both start. Like, at the end of the season, if Bash can find a way to get healthy and come back, I think you slide him back in. Maybe you kick one of he or Gaines out where Ashawn Robinson is, pull Robinson off, and then keep rotating that depth in and out. But man, how on earth do you run on that? I mean, Greg Gaines, elite run stuffer. Sebastian Joseph Day, probably the best run stuffer in football. Imagine those guys together. That's the Williams wall recreated all over again from the Vikings back in the day. For those that remember Pat and Kevin Williams, or you go back to even, same time frame, Jacksonville Jaguars, Marcus Stroud, John Henderson. That's the kind of stuff that's kicking in my head when I think of those two next to each other. Oh my goodness, that would be so fun. It would be a shame if we never got to really see them together, especially if Bash gets to walk in the offseason. But I think, you need to find a way to get these guys together. If they can stay healthy, it's going to be hard in the offseason because they have limited money, and Bash should demand some good money. But in terms of, realism or realistic kind of possibilities here, I'm going to assume that Bash does end up walking, and Greg Gaines does end up being the next starter at nose tackle. The second to last question from Elijah Nimes. I hope I said that correct. He said, please talk about Cooper Kupp for MVP. I don't necessarily think he's going to have a great case. I mentioned it on Twitter. Do you guys think John Taylor should win? Jonathan Taylor, the running back from Indy, or Cooper Kupp? And I wanted to see sort of where people were landing on that conversation, because we've seen a lot of, Taylor should win MVP, Taylor should. But what's the difference between what he's doing right now and Cooper Kupp? There is no difference, really. The only thing is, Taylor's doing it rushing and Cooper Kupp's doing it through the air. And Kupp plays for a better team, a better offense. He's the engine of his offense, just like Taylor is. He's going to break records. He's already set a franchise record in receptions. He's going to break potentially receiving records in terms of receiving yardage, maybe in receiving touchdowns, smashing the triple crown in receptions, yards, and touchdowns compared to all the other receivers. To me, I think he's got just as good a case. So if one guy has a case, I think both have to have a case. But if one guy doesn't, then probably neither should. So, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Quarterbacks always win this award. I think a quarterback's going to win. So that's where I'll stay with it. But if Cooper Kupp's not even in the discussion, I would be disappointed. Let's get him a vote or two, at least get him in that discussion. And then OPOY, Offensive Player of the Year, he's got to be one of the top options there. I mean, come on. The quarterbacks this season, not been great. I think if there's any year where a different position can win, it's got to be this one. Now I'll move to the last two here. I'll lump these together because they're always fun ones. From @JB_Peoples, he said, since this episode is posting on Christmas Eve, where do some Rams players land on Santa's naughty and nice list? And then my guy from @RainWithTheCam, he said, what do you think was said in this moment? LOL. And I can't obviously show you guys, but it's a GIF where Jalen Ramsey is sort of rocking the baby. It was during the Seattle Seahawks game. And presumably he was doing that to kind of, entice, I guess, DK Metcalf on the sideline. Not to DK Metcalf, but I think that was sort of the metaphor there. And then afterwards, near the end of the game, he's walking off the field, Ramsey, and this was like 2 quarters later. Sean McVay runs up to him, does the same thing, rocking the baby. And I posted the clip on Twitter. Hilarious. I honestly think that they were teasing DK Metcalf because this guy used to wear a pacifier in his mouth as his mouth guard. That was sort of the design he went after. And I think they were saying like, oh yeah, we're rocking you, like you're a baby and we're your daddy or something. So I don't know what was said there. It kind of looked like Sean McVay said, what was that? But I want to be a little bit more immature and say like they were ribbing at the Seahawks there, kind of sending those guys off to Cabo, man. Go secure tickets, go get a little discount. It's early in the season. You guys can go off to Cabo. There's nothing left to play for. So I don't know what was said, but I hope it was a little bit of a chirp because it's a divisional rival, man. These are fun. These are fun games. Everyone takes it personal. Let's do it. That's what makes football great, man. That's why the Rams 49ers last game, I love it. I can't wait. These teams should hate each other, man. That's the best part of football is two teams that can't stand each other and just want to beat the snot out of each other. It sounds some like weird 1993 type of coach stuff here, but I love it. That's the root of the game here. Divisional rivals. Let's get after it. Somebody's got to win, and then we're going to talk smack after we do. In terms of the naughty and nice list, that's a tough one. I don't know. In terms of nice, it seems like Cooper Kupp's got to be up there. That little helmet pat and picking up a defender after smoking him. Maybe he's on the naughty list for that. That was a little bit disrespectful, but we'll say he's on the nice list. Jalen Ramsey maybe on the naughty list for the little rock the baby. Rock the baby is a little disrespectful. I absolutely love it. Every single second of that. That was fantastic. Guys like Andrew Whitworth probably on the nice list. He's not going to do anything. He's a little bit older. He's always probably just showing up, taking care of work and getting out of there. Matthew Stafford on the nice list. All these guys that's the thing about the Rams. I know this is a joke question, but that's why I love this team and covering them just because you can be proud of seeing all these guys in the locker room. There is never going to be some sort of issue that comes out of there, right? You see some of these teams like the Las Vegas Raiders, and I don't mean to throw them under the bus here because it's not necessarily their fault. The John Gruden stuff, the Henry Ruggs stuff, that stuff is ugly to see in the NFL. And we see it more often than not. When you look at the Rams, they never have that kind of stuff coming out, domestic violence or all these other weird topics and terrible things, DUIs and all this stuff. The Rams always field such a good team of players and guys off the field that you can be proud to employ. And that's why we'll say all of these guys land on the nice list. I love it, man. That's why covering this team's awesome. You never have to be, ashamed of who these guys are because they're never giving you a reason to think that they're bad people. And they always just go take care of their job and then go do whatever they got to do in their fun spare time, go live their lives. Most of them have wives or children or whatever the case is. And at the end of the day, that's what makes this game great, right? That's why this team's easy to root for. That's why it's such a likable group of guys. Everyone likes each other. Everyone fights for each other in a good way, I'm saying, on the field. And there's no bad characters. There's nobody that we have to kind of circle and be like, oh, we don't trust it. No, this team's awesome. So we're all going to put these guys on the nice list. Hopefully everyone can have a Merry Christmas. Thank you guys so much for always listening to the Locked On Rams podcast and for always making us your first daily listen. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you guys. Enjoy the time with your families, whatever the case may be, however you're going to spend this holiday. Be safe. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy this game. I know I'm going to. Make sure to tune back in next week on Monday. Post-game recap. Fingers crossed. Victory Monday. We want to do it for a 4th week in a row. Just a reminder, you guys can come connect with us on Twitter at QBsMEP, at Locked On Rams, and on YouTube at Locked On Rams. And make sure to turn on that little bell notification icon so you can get notified when we post every day, 8 a.m. Eastern. Please subscribe or follow to get our latest episodes, content, breaking news, and a whole lot more.